Hello, I'm Condoleezza Rice, Professor Condoleezza Rice here at Stanford University, and I'm really proud to have a chance to be with three wonderful examples of women who are making a difference for student athletes, for the university, and in fact for women across the country and across the world. I'm a great believer in intercollegiate athletics. I believe that it helps to instill discipline, it helps to instill a sense of purpose, not to mention a sense of teamwork. But for women, these qualities that are instilled in becoming great athletes at a place like Stanford are lifelong lessons, lifelong skills that can be taken from the university, from the courts, and from the fields into life. I think it's no accident that many of the women who have been leaders in breaking through glass ceilings in the corporate environment, in government, in just about every aspect of life, have been athletes at some point in their lives. And so I am really looking forward to our discussion today with these exemplary women coaches. And so if they will join me, the incomparable Tara VanDerveer of women's basketball, an award-winning coach, a Hall of Famer. Tara, welcome. Coach
Thank you,
Ann
Connie.
Walker of golf, women's golf, and I might say somebody who helps me with my golf game from time to time, and Coach Tabitha Yim from women's gymnastics. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. I'm going to start off with just a general question to the three of you, which is tell me a little bit about your journey into coaching. Tell me a little bit about your journey to Stanford, and perhaps tell me a little bit about what you expected when you got here and what might have surprised you about becoming a coach at Stanford. And I'm going to start a little bit in reverse order here. I'm going to come to Coach VanDerveer last because I've got a little extra question for her. So, Tabitha, could you start?
Sure. So I was actually a student athlete here on the farm. And to be honest, I never wanted to be a coach. It wasn't really on my radar. But my head coach at the time reached out to me shortly after I graduated, and she asked me if I'd be interested in the opportunity. Um, and so I was just blown away that she even thought about me. And at the time, I was doing Teach for America, and I told her no. But she planted a seed, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I called her back a few months later and I said, "Are you serious? Do you really want me to come back to coach?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm 100% serious." And so I made the decision to come back to the farm. And, again, I didn't know how interested I was in the career at the time. And actually, one of the things I love about being a coach here at Stanford is I remember Tara, she put together this women's group and she actually invited Judy Sweet to come speak to us. Um, and Judy Sweet was the first female athletic director, the first NCAA women president. And it really had an impact on me because she was sharing about the percentages and the numbers of female coaches in college sports and how important it was for us to continue kind of blazing that trail. And so in that moment, I had never really thought about it in those terms, but I felt so grateful for the female leadership at Stanford, from my head coach at the time, who kind of mentored me in this role, and just all of the amazing coaches I'm surrounded by here at Stanford. And so I think that's something that really caught me off guard and inspired me to continue my journey as a coach. And is something that I think about all the time still, even to this day.
Right. And Coach Ann, you came from a different school. So can you talk a
I
little bit
did.
about that?
I like that you're already teasing me, but I did. I came via the school across the bay, California Golden Bears. But my journey somewhat started in college, where I was really fortunate to be part of a team that had great communication, great teamwork, great camaraderie, and we also had great success. And we had a wonderful leader by Nancy McDaniel. She's still the coach there. And I was really influenced by her at the time. She had two young children, similar to I do now, and just how much passion and inspiration she had for women in general, and especially female athletes. And so she was really influential, and similar to what Tabitha said. Upon graduation, very quickly, she gave me the opportunity to come on board as the assistant coach. And I say quickly I graduated on a Saturday and I started on the Monday morning. So it was all the 24 hours without a job, much to my parents' delight, off the paycheck. And it was just an amazing journey. And I would add to that, at the time that we had a female athletic director as well, and Sandy Barber, who is now at Penn State, and really formed a great relationship with Sandy, and Teresa Kewen, who's now at the Pac-12. And so I had these three strong women around me who really believed in the mission of college athletics. They believed in female student athletes, and that had an influence on me, where I knew for me that this was a path I wanted to stay on. And similar again to what Tabitha said, and I've talked to Coach Tara about this a bunch, is how do we keep women in coaching? Because I think back to those three women and the influence they had on me. If we don't have strong women leaders like that in college athletics, how do we propel that feeling forward and have future generational leaders in women's college athletics? So I felt very inspired by that. And now here I am at Stanford, surrounded by the greatest coaches. So very fortunate.
And Tara, both Anne and Tabitha have mentioned mentorship, really, of women who propelled them, really told them they could do something that maybe they themselves hadn't really thought much about. I always thought that great mentors were people who see something in you that you might not even see in yourself. And you've talked often about the deficit that we're starting to experience in women's coaches in women's sports. So can you talk a little bit about why you think it's so important? And if I can push you a little bit on, you and I come from the same generation, I'm going to put it that way. You've been around for over the years.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting, Condi. It's a pleasure to be on a panel with you and these outstanding young coaches, Anne and Tabitha. I've been at Stanford for 35 years, and I actually had no intention of coaching. I planned to go to law school, but when I took a year off, I went home, and my mom said, "You're going to go coach your sister's team." Title IX had just passed, and Title IX is a very big part of why we have the women's sports that we have, and thankfully we do. It legislated basically equitable opportunities for girls and women in sports. But what it also did at the time was, because there maybe weren't opportunities for girls to play, there also maybe at the time weren't coaches. So there were a lot of men got into women's coaching and have found that it's very rewarding, to work with young, motivated women. And I think it's really imperative that we work to encourage young girls and young women to be in coaching. And on our coaching staff, we have a great staff of women, Kate Pay, Katie Stedding, who played at Stanford, and Kate played at Stanford, and Brittany Anderson. So to help develop coaches, young coaches, I think it's important for me to mentor not just our coaches, but also other coaches at Stanford and other coaches throughout the whole Pac-12 and the country. Actually, I talk to and try to, help them, develop as young coaches. But for a young girl who, has a female coach, she can say to herself, I can be like that someday. I could be a coach someday. And it's a great job. I love it. It's really fun to be a coach, to go to the gym and to work with really motivated student athletes. The second part of your question, what has changed? I think a lot more is the same than has changed. Young people want discipline. They want you to help them go to a place they can't get to by themselves. And you're an incredibly accomplished pianist. And as an adult, I wanted to take up piano, and I thought I could teach myself. And what I learned very quickly was having a great teacher could take me to a place that I couldn't get to by myself. And as a coach, that's what I think Tabitha and Anne and I try to do, and all of our coaches at Stanford, but to try to maximize the abilities that our young athletes have. But one of the things that has changed a little bit is social media and the involvement of social media, and that's not always good.
Yeah, Tara, what keeps you fresh 35 years after having started this? It's funny, you talk about playing the piano. I still take piano lessons because I've always felt that I can get better. And my view is that, if a great golfer can have a coach, then I can have a coach. So I think
Right.
you're right about people who can take you to the next level. But what keeps you going after 35 years?
This year especially, every once in a while, I ask myself that same question because this has been a very challenging year. Every morning we get tested, do the COVID testing. For 7, 8 weeks, we were on the road, not allowed to be home. It was very challenging, but it reinforced why I do this. It's because of the great young student athletes that I get to coach, and working with players like Kiana Williams, working with Alexi Hull, Fran Beliebe, Haley Jones. I could go through the whole list of every single player on our team, wanting to help them be the best they can be. And it's fun every day to see how much they improve. And our team, I'm so proud of our team. And for any young athletes that are on this Zoom, what I'm proud of is not necessarily just how hard they play, but how they have been such great teammates for each other during a very hard time. And these are lessons that are life lessons that I know our team will carry forward.
Yes, Anne and Tabitha, before we go on to other questions, let's talk a little bit about this tough year, because it has been, we're almost a year in now to the point at which we kind of went into lockdown and quarantine. Are there everybody's talking about the lessons learned from this period, but are there some things that you can take forward when we're in more quote unquote normal times? Tabitha, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, especially at Stanford, we talk about it a lot as a team. There's really no way to sugarcoat that it's been an extremely challenging year with so many different obstacles, so many things being thrown our way. And especially with Stanford student athletes, I think they're so organized, they're on top of their game. They want to know exactly what's coming up, when, on the dot. And I think it's really stretched people to step outside of their comfort zone and to embrace things as they come and recognize how strong they are. And so just as Tara was saying, I think sports is a place that really, we say in gymnastics, college athletics in general, it vaults you to that next chapter of your life. And so that's something we've talked about specifically for this year, is it's going to be a growth year, and we're going to be stretched in so many different ways. We're going to learn that resilience, we're going to be patient, and we're going to really come together to tackle this and recognize that you're not alone. But I also think just validating that, yes, we understand this is very difficult, and you feeling that frustration, you feeling those angers, that's okay. And we want you to be able to talk about that, because that in itself is a skill that will serve you well for the rest of your life too. So I think there's just been a lot of communication, obviously a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but I think all in all these things will definitely carry with us, and it will be a part of our story moving forward.
Anne, how about you?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's what we've tried to talk about, is this is part of their moving forward. This is a story they'll tell their kids, they'll tell their grandkids. And we perhaps can't see the lessons that come out in the positive side right now. We're still in it. But we will look back on this and we'll say, man, that was something that really shaped our team, our culture, our community, our families, and broader our world. And, no one wants to ever live through a pandemic, but we've tried to continuously step back and reflect upon what are some of these things that, this generation's seen firsthand, and not every generation will. Hopefully this will be the last pandemic we face. And then as a team, I've been blown away. Every day I am blown away by the young women we coach at Stanford. They are remarkable. And I remember when I was first interviewing for this job, actually I had a lunch with Coach Tara on my interview here to campus, which was completely terrifying. But anyway, I made it through. And she told me, you will never coach athletes like this. You have to be on your game every day, because they are so exceptional. They're ready to work hard. They're ready to push hard. They're ready to be committed, disciplined, everything you could ever want in an athlete, even just a young person. And that is exactly how it's been. And so through this, for me, the optimism that I've seen in them, the ability to stay patient, the resilience. And we've talked a lot about, we know where we're going. We do not know how we're going to get there. We might try to drive to New York via Arizona, Texas, back to Seattle, through Canada, and all back around, but we'll get there. And if we stay together, we stay the road, we stay patient, we'll be there in the end. And I feel that from my squad, and that's as a coach, I couldn't ask for anything else.
So what have you learned from your athletes, do you think? We all come into, and I'll call you for this purpose, professors, teachers, because that's really what I do. And I always find that in the process of teaching and over the many years, and Tara, I've been at this even a little bit longer than you have. I think I'm 37 years at Stanford. Anne and Tabitha, we won't ask how old you were when Tara and I started. But how do you do you incorporate lessons? Do you think you're better now because you've had to deal with different personalities? I'll tell you an example of this. Mike Montgomery, who was the men's basketball coach here in the 90s, highly successful coach. And I was at a senior banquet with him where he was thanking his players. And he said to Brevin Knight, who had been his point guard and was graduating, he said, "Brevin, you made me a better coach because if you knew Mike Montgomery, he started out as a coach who was very organized. I mean, it wasn't quite four corners like Dean Smith, but it was pretty organized. And here comes Brevin, and he's kind of a wild point guard who throws the ball away but makes spectacular plays. And Mike had to learn to coach that kind of player and that kind of personality. Do you think you've had to evolve in dealing with different kinds of personalities and different athletes? Maybe you want to start, Tara, since you've had the most experience at this.
Well, I think that, from the beginning of the pandemic, even I've talked to our team about your middle name has to be flexible. But I think as a coach, that always has to be your middle name, because it's you're not trying to fit, a round peg into a square hole. You're trying to maximize each player that you have and help them be the very best that they can be. Not try to, we don't have a system at Stanford. We adapt our system to who we have. So when you have Chine, she's different than NECA. When you have a Jane Appel, so it's really trying to make the most out of who you have. And I think that probably was a good lesson for Mike, but it serves every coach well to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses.
Yeah, Anne?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think adaptability as a coach it's imperative. You can't function without it. And we want to get the best out of our players at all times. And that's what I love about coaching. No 2 years is the same. No 2 days is the same. And each player, what's really cool in this 4-year window, the player that you say hello to fall of freshman year is not the player you say goodbye to 4 years later. And so not only are you coaching different players, you're coaching a different person within those 4 years. And actually someone just said to me the other day, which kind of blew my mind. It may have been you, Conde, that said, we spend 4 years with them in this window up to the age of 22. That's almost 20% of their life we're with them when we say goodbye to them. And it's such an influential position you get to have. It's a great privilege. But yes, every player that's come through has taught me something. I believe that will continue as long as I'm here. And especially the really elite players, they're remarkable to be up close with, because no 2 elite players do it the same way. They all do it very different, and they're all wired so different, yet the stats on paper might look pretty similar. So as a coach, that's really fun to figure out how they tick and then turn the screws a little to help them get better.
Right. By the way, I've got a couple of questions in the Q&A function, and if people would like to put them there, we'll take them. But Tabitha, you on the same point.
Yeah, I think everything that's been said is absolutely right. I feel so lucky to work with the Stanford student athletes here. And I think one of the best parts of coaching is forming those relationships and seeing that growth over the 4 years. And this class, my seniors this year, they're the first class that I've coached from beginning till end as a head coach. So I feel like I'm just starting my journey as a head coach. And it was really funny the other day, one of my seniors texted me at the start of the day and she said, "I just got accepted into Purdue for grad school." And it was amazing to be able to celebrate that moment with her. And then later that night, she texted me and she was getting a scan done, an MRI. And she said, "Oh man, I had to wear my mask. I was so claustrophobic and I was starting to freak out." And then I thought, maybe I'll do some beam visuals. So I did my beam visuals and that calmed me down. And I just had to share that with you. And I remember that night I was looking at that text and I said, "This is why I coach." the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, getting to be a part of that and just playing a very small role in their journey here at Stanford is such a gift.
And it is a gift, and yet these young women are under a lot of pressure, really, because there is the pressure to perform in the sport, but of course here at Stanford, there's the classroom too. And so, talk a little bit about, and Tabitha, you will have experienced it here at Stanford, but there is a sense in which just the narrative about Stanford athletics, which is true, you have to perform both. Talk a little bit about how you help your players with balance. And then as kind of extension of that, one of the questions that came in is how do you also help with kind of off-court or off-course presence? Because, one bad social media post, Tara mentioned that, and things can down. And most people say Stanford athletes are perpetually gracious to the fans, taking the time to say hello to the little girls who come to watch. You talk a little bit about the total package for the Stanford women athletes here, and what they have to do. Tara, can you start?
Well, I think the whole experience of coaching at Stanford is just outstanding opportunity. And I think for some of the, whether they're coaches on the call or even young athletes, to be successful, it doesn't have to be at Stanford, but every place, you have to be a student and an athlete, not just, it says student athlete. So I think that for young people and for coaches and parents, encourage your daughters and sons to study and not get too focused on one or the other. I think the most important thing, honestly, is to enjoy the day, enjoy today, and not be looking forward to and pressuring people to, get a scholarship or go to a place that isn't a good fit. I think we all are, we all enjoy being in a place where we're comfortable and where we, feel valued and appreciated. And I think just, the whole, as coaches, we want to help mentor young people. And things are different in the world with the social media, maybe a little bit. But I think that young people, they want us to help them be the best they can be. And that is my job. And I think I felt that that's my job for years.
Tara, a couple of people have also said congrats on the Pac-12 championship and the D1 records wins record. So we just have to note that.
Thank you.
Let me, kind of a fun question here. Your favorite coaching moment? We've talked about the challenges of COVID-19 and how you prepare athletes, but is there a moment that just sticks out in your mind and you say, oh, that one will always be part of my memory bank? And I would hope I know what yours is.
Yeah.
You start?
I know. Well, I can. I was starting to get emotional just thinking about it, though. I'm already right back there. It was definitely when we won the national championship in Florida. And gosh, we'd had such a difficult year that year. I think that's why we knew we were strong, but we'd overcome so many challenges. It was just incredible. It seemed like one thing after the other. And then for all those things to come together, and we had this incredibly long week. And when we won it, the emotions were so overwhelming, and the exhaustion and just everything. Yeah, I'll never forget that moment. And who I shared it with too. I mean, every team is special, but Mariah Stackhouse is a really, really special kid. And for her to be the one that came back birdie on 17-18, 2 down in the national championship to take it to extra hole and win it. I couldn't think of a better person, and just a great young woman. And for those out there who follow the LPGA, she's out there in her 5th year. She's doing great. She's an amazing ambassador for our program and for all of Stanford, quite frankly. So I'm honored to have coached her and had that moment with her.
Right, and in a kind of special situation, she's an African-American golfer in a sport that doesn't have many.
And that's been a real blessing for me too, this year with the social justice conversations, and I've had many with Mariah and shared that journey with her, and it's been a real blessing. So, you talk about why do you want to coach? hopefully they get a little something from me, but boy, I learn a lot from them. And Mariah Stackhouse has taught me more than I could ever have imagined from any athlete. So real honor.
Okay, Tabitha, favorite moment?
Oh man. There's so many to choose from. I mean, the first one that came to mind is Elizabeth Price was on the Stanford team in her senior year when I was in my first year back at Stanford, and just had an unbelievable season. And being able to see her at the national championships, she got a perfect 10 on bars, and the crowd was on their feet. And just being able to see her have that moment after everything that she's done for the sport and for our team. And like Anne said, I mean, being able to work with an athlete like her was just something that was truly special and remarkable. And then, sorry, I'm going to give two. Last year, coming into Maples, we scored a all-time high on floor. It was our last event, and it's one of those things where gymnastics is usually an individual sport, but in college, you actually get that team experience of feeling that momentum build and the scores build and the energy. We definitely felt that way our last meet of the year at home, and being able to send the seniors out in style that night is something that I'll always remember too.
Tara, you must have had many.
I do. You know, whether it's winning a national championship or gold medal in the Olympics, Olympia Scott calling me 1 hour after she had her baby. But I have to say, one that I will always remember is watching Fran Beliebe throw down the first dunk for Stanford in a game. And she did it against Cal. And it was just I will never forget that. It was just awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to go for a minute from favorite moments to a couple of questions that come in about some of the harder parts of coaching. So having a player that doesn't completely buy into your system and how you deal with that, or personality differences on a team. After all, we're talking about sports, particularly for golf and gymnastics, where they've been individual greatness in individual sports. Tara, it's always a team sport in basketball, but you still have however many players on that team. They're different. They come from different experiences. They react differently to pressures. How do you deal with some of the more difficult aspects of coaching? Do you want to start, Tara?
Well, that's we were keeping it light for a while. Now we're getting into the challenging questions. You know, it's hard. You know, we're all people. We all, you know, I think are wired in a certain way where, you know, as a coach, we want our team to buy into how we're doing things. And sometimes it happens a little bit better than other times. But I think that it's really important that we, as a coach, we are the adults in the room, and that we try to always treat our players fairly, that we're honest, we work hard to help them be the best that they can be, and we have their best interest. But communicating with people, and I can look at examples of, you know, just last night we're winning a championship, and I'm like, you know, should I have said that, or did I do the right thing? And I think I'm always, you know, wondering, you know, I'm always working at doing a better job, because if you're a perfectionist, coaching and sports are not for you. You know, everyone's not going to get 2 birdies down the home stretch to win the national championship. You might miss a free throw, or, you know, as a coach, you might say the wrong thing. But I think one of the things, Connie, that helped me the most was my very first coaching job was coaching my sister. And I got home and my parents said, well, how come you didn't play Marie more? You know, and I'm like, well, you know, she's not a very good shooter and she doesn't play defense. But I realized that everyone on your team is someone's daughter, someone's sister, and you have to love them. You know, you might not agree with their behavior, but you really have to love the person.
Yeah. Anne or Tabitha, you want to hold out on this one? Hold forth on this one?
I think that's right. It comes down to love. And, you know, when you recruit them, you make a commitment to them and that they're part of the family. And we all have family dynamics, everyone that I know. So, but you still love your family. And that's the thing, taking time to try to understand that person, try to understand where they're coming from, And I think it's also a microcosm of life. You know, not everyone in life is going to agree with you or function the same way or communicate the same way or see it the same way as you. And so working through that with an athlete is a real opportunity, and to help them and to help my own self. I'm laughing at what Coach said over here. She said, you know, sometimes as a coach, you might not say the right thing. Every single day, the stuff that comes out of my mouth, I'm like, that definitely wasn't the right thing. But hopefully the relationships I have with my players, it's an honest relationship, and it's one built on integrity, which allows us to move forward and see the faults in both the athlete and in the coach, and use it as a learning opportunity.
I want to circle now to kind of national issues and put a couple on the table. One is about the issues of potentially professionalism in sports, and can we hang on to the intercollegiate athletic model with so much pressure? It's perhaps a bigger issue with men's sports, but it's going to start to affect all. And then in that regard also, you know, Stanford, which is just a premier program, particularly for women, has really tried to maintain issues of equity between men's and women's sports here. It's been very important to us. How do you think about some of these larger issues that intercollegiate sports is facing, and does Stanford have special responsibilities here?
Do you want me to start on that one?
Yeah, sure.
You know, with the new rules versus, you know, regarding compensation, it's I think it's going to be a real challenge for a lot of places. There's an, you know, Condi, you were involved with U.S. Soviet relations. We have an arms race going on in collegiate sports. The cost of things just keeps getting higher and higher. You know, the facilities are just palatial at some places. And the pressure to recruit top student athletes is amazing. And when you have, you know, the money that's involved now, when it comes from under the table to on top of the table, could really change the dynamics of college sports in very big ways. When, you know, a quarterback or a point guard can demand that kind of commercial money. And I see it happening more in men's sports, and maybe a little bit in, and maybe like a swimming, Katie Ledecky would have benefited from it, or maybe, you know, Mariah would have benefited. But, you know, in women's basketball, I mean, it's yet to be seen how that will really impact college sports. And it could impact it very negatively.
Any aspect of this you'd like to speak to, Tabitha or Anne?
I think Tara's absolutely right. It could completely change the landscape of college athletics. And so I think there's a number of people who are being as thoughtful as possible to protect the experience, but also to protect the student athletes. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this moves forward in the coming years.
Yeah. On the flip side, when you think about the professional sports, particularly for Anne and maybe for Tara, how do you get those experiences in professional sports? So the LPGA or the WNBA. When I watch our players graduate from golf or from basketball, I'd love to have them have a really great professional experience. Do you think it's starting to come along? Is there more that can be done there? Anne, maybe you could start since this.
I mean, I think there's always more can be done. I think that's, you know, any female in any line of work, any industry, there's always more can be done. So I think that goes without saying. I think some sports are ahead of the game relative to other sports. I think both Tara and I are fortunate enough we do have professional tours that are sustainable and provide women with opportunities. But no, we have a long way to go. And I don't know that anyone's got the perfect answer. And I'm not sure there is a perfect answer to any of that. But hopefully with time, you know, that's where I look at my job every day as an opportunity to influence some of the smartest, brightest women heading out into the world. And so if I can influence them positively and plant seeds that they can go on and make change, I think that's our best bet at making change down the road in 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Tara?
Well, you know, our student athletes have been involved in a lot of not just a professional sport as players, but beyond that, working in the WNBA and the NBA offices. I think it's going to be fun to see how maybe women in professional sports then they can parlay that into even working in professional men's and women's sports. So it's just a continue opening of the door for women in the sports, playing and coaching, and maybe the business side of it too.
When you get to the end of your coaching career, probably a long time off for a couple of our folks here, and maybe not so long off, though, Tara, I think you're going to keep going for a long, long time. You know, you and I are going to be doing this till they take us out, I have a feeling.
I think so.
Yeah, but I'd like to know how, I've always asked about legacy, and I always say, look, somebody else will determine my legacy, but there are some things that I hope I will have left behind. So let me ask you, as you think about the student athletes that you have coached and that you've influenced thus far, and the ones that you would influence in the future, how do you think about what you want them to have taken out of their experience with you? What's important to you in that regard? Tabitha, start.
Sure. You know, I think especially at a place like Stanford, and you mentioned it, just the stress and the pressure that the athletes put on themselves. I think to know that you are capable, you are strong, and you are worthy, and you are enough. And just that they will always have family here at the farm, and they will always have people like me who are their greatest champions that they can rely on. And so leaving here and just knowing that that's going to be a part of them and a part of their story, I hope will be a gift that they can take with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a few parts to it. One, every kid that I bring here, I like to give the commitment that we're going to vie for championships, and they want that. So I want that to be part of the legacy, that they felt they were part of a competitive program. So that's in the one dimension. In the other dimension, you know, I read a lot of coaching books, and I've read so many books where John Wooden, where his players, they down the line find that they have kids and they're teaching their kid these skills that they're like, oh my gosh, that's coach taught me that. And it's in their head, and they reflect back on some of those things that stuck with them for life. I hope I have that impact in some of our players too, similar to what Tabitha's saying, that they reflect back and think, we did that every day. It was repetitive and I didn't understand it, but now as an adult with a family or a corporate job or whatever it might be, think back and think those were lessons that really served me well, far beyond the golf course. So twofold, but hopefully that's, and hopefully it's not tying their shoelace like Coach Wooden taught them.
Tara.
You know, sometimes a player that maybe has graduated 20 years ago will say, Tara, do you remember when you said this to me? And I'm like, no, I don't, but they remember what you say. And so I want to make sure that not only what I say, but how I say it resonates with them and helps them be a better person, a better basketball player, a better teammate, and someone that, you know, can go out and, you know, as Tabitha and Ann have said, you know, be confident and be great contributors to their community. I'm so proud of, you know, the players that go back and they're on their school boards, or they're, you know, they're leaders in their community, and they give back. And I have learned so much more from our players than they would ever learn from me. But I want our players to make a difference in this world.
So let me close with a question to each of you about the broader national landscape. And you've talked about what you want to leave as an effect on your players, and that's very important. How do you think you would like to see women's sports progress, and how do you think your role here at Stanford relates to that? Because you do have a platform in a sense, because you coach at really, I would say, the premier program in the country, but certainly one of the premier programs. And by the way, I'm going to say this, Tara, you probably haven't yet experienced what I've experienced, which is the people who now come back and say, oh, you were my mother's advisor. When you start coaching your players' kids, you know you've been there an awful long time. But given that this is Stanford, given that you've got something of a megaphone about sports, what do you want to leave to women's sports as a whole? Where do we need to be, and how can we get there? I'm going to go in reverse order. Start with Tabitha, then Anne, then I'll have Coach Sage have the last word.
Sure. Visibility, just being able to celebrate them at the highest level, on the highest stages, and allowing other young girls, like Tara said, to see that it's possible and making it so visible that nobody can miss it. I think that's just so, so important. And I know that's something that we've been talking a lot in our sport, is how do we get our athletes out there front and center and really celebrating them.
Anne?
Yeah, I think that's right. No matter what community they're in, you know, even if it's an airport, we talk about that a lot. An airport, a golf course, taking the time to thank everyone. It might be their only touch point ever with a Stanford student athlete, and making it a positive one, because that one influence could change a young girl's life. And I think about, you know, I mentioned Mariah. I think back to this. We were in LA hitting golf balls at a public range, super late at night. We didn't even know where we were. When Mariah was a freshman, and there was a 6-year-old hitting a few stalls down from us. And Mariah went over and she talked to her and she signed this golf ball for her. And she said, keep practicing. One day you might go to Stanford too. About 2 weeks ago, I got an email in my inbox from her dad. She's now in 8th grade. She's one of the top ranked players in Southern California. And it was a picture of her holding the ball. And he said that ball changed her life and her direction. And that to me sums it up. That's how we should be conducting business every day, is taking time to have touch points with those in our community.
Tara,
you know, I think that if there's a message that from Stanford, or, you know, that I would want to communicate to kind of young people, coaches out there, is that for me and for Tabitha and for Anne, coaching is our job. But I think more than anything, we want as coaches, sport is fun. And I think that young people should play sports with joy, not the pressure of winning, not the pressure of a coach or parents, you know, on them about how, you know, practicing, or, you know, but they should play sports with joy and be thankful, you know, that you're healthy, that you can be out there, and to really kind of take each day and, you know, as a kind of a single entity, and just say, I'm going to practice really hard today. I'm going to have fun with my teammates, and not always be thinking about, you know, college basketball or pro basketball or any of that, but just really enjoying the day.
well, thank you. Thank you, Tabitha and Anne and Tara. It's been a wonderful conversation, and thanks for everything that you do for our student athletes and for Stanford, and for the country. The country is better for Title IX. It's better for the progress that women athletes have made. And ultimately, it's better for women's empowerment. I always said when I was Secretary of State, if I could wave a magic wand and do one thing, I would empower women, because a lot of other good things happen when you do that. And so you are a part of doing that. So thanks very much. And thanks to our audience and all of you who participated in Q&A, and to the athletes who are on this call, on this Zoom. Thanks for your dedication to the classroom and to your sport. Goodbye.
Thanks, Condi.
Thank you.